Studio Blue Radio is proud to present Raffa Music Show by Raffaela Madaffari. Check the microphone.
Hi everyone, welcome to the Raffa Music Show here on Studio Blue Radio. I'm Raffy, and today we have a very special guest, American singer, songwriter, and producer, JDiker. Hello, JD.
Hey, thanks very much for having me.
Thank you for being here. So you've been singing for, more than a decade at this point, releasing albums and stuff. What got you into music in the first place?
Yeah, it's wild to think it's been over a decade, but yeah, it has now. I got started because I started playing guitar, and I just found that anytime I would sit down with a guitar, kind of everything else would fade out of view for a little bit, and that was hugely helpful. Just kind of escaping everything and then in this kind of a similar way, but in the exact opposite way, when I started to try writing songs, it allowed me to I could escape, but also use songwriting as a way to really think about the world and just the stuff that I was dealing with growing up and all that. So it kind of became both an escape, but also like a way to process everything. And I got so into that and obsessed with how it all worked, and music and lyrics and language and all that. It was kind of, I didn't really have a choice. Eventually I kind of gave into it,
Right. Now, when you do your songwriting, do you come up with like the melody first, or is it the lyrics first and then you put the music to it afterwards?
Yeah, it's really kind of case by case. Sometimes I'll have a title, or I'll just a short line or a lyric that I know I want to work into a song, and then so I feel like as I'm hearing melody ideas down the road, I'm kind of biased toward fitting that lyric or that title to those melodies. That sometimes works like that, but sometimes you just sit down at a piano or with a guitar or whatever, and melody or just a groove, something comes to you and you write from that. So I think at this point I've kind of done what feels like most of the permutations that I've tried them, but
right.
Yeah, it kind of just depends.
So you had formed JDiker and the Good Nights. Is that still together, or are you strictly a soloist at this point?
Yeah, that's a good question. So JDiker and the Good Nights was like my college band project that we tried to kind of keep going, and what happened was over the years that we had members change, and people join the real world as functional adults, with jobs but I kept at it. Yeah, I know. I've been running from that my whole life, So over the years lineup changed a bunch, and then ultimately we just dropped the name. It was simpler. I was playing a lot of solo shows, acoustic, and it was honestly in a lot of ways it was just a marketing decision, because I would be people would tag the band name on social media, but then I'd show up for a solo gig, and folks were frustrated that it was solo and band. So I got to really embrace the full scope of my monster ego and just be JDiker. But sometimes I do have a band. So sometimes, and I've been lucky to kind of hang on to my rhythm section for I think close to a decade now. The same bass player and drummer. So I'm lucky in that I have Jim and Dylan with me, and we're kind of we're really comfortable with each other, and the years have finally kind of like paid off. That chemistry over the years and everything.
Yeah.
We really have a good connection now.
Absolutely, that's awesome. Now, when you had first started the JDiker and the Good Nights, was the music similar to the genre that you're singing now, or was it a different sound?
Yeah, it was. It's in the same world. I would say we were a lot more like rootsy, organic out of the gate. Just by default, we had a fiddle player, a violinist, and then bass, drums, and I was on acoustic guitars and sometimes an electric. But we very much just sounded like those instruments together. And then I think as we progressed as we released we released 3 albums together as a band, and the songs kind of went from really earthy to a more polished kind of like pop approach to a band sound, I guess you could say. And then our final album had a little bit of everything, but it was definitely more, we started to use like drum sampling and more of a pop technique kind of mixed in with organic instruments and stuff. So it evolved, and then by the time I was releasing as a solo act, it was truly like a hybrid of synthesizer and drum machines mixed with acoustic guitar and piano and that kind of thing.
Right. Awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
So your first album, The Shape of Things, was released in 2009. How did it feel to finally just like get into the music world and like actually releasing an album?
Yeah, it was fun and scary, and I would say mostly just financially terrifying for me at the time, because we had, the way that project worked was we were in college together, school, Westminster College in Pennsylvania, and we went to school, and then 2 weeks, I think it was about 2 weeks out of graduation, we went to a studio in Newark, Ohio, outside Columbus, and it was a really cool spot, and they had an apartment for bands to stay while they recorded, so we all like kind of just went right to this apartment and recorded, and we felt it was really fun. We felt like we were really doing it and stuff, and then we had this kind of budget hurried album made by a bunch of dudes who had just gotten out of school and really had a long way to go learning how to play music and just building our chops and stuff. And so it was I would say, honestly, at the beginning, I still feel pretty naive, frankly, but it definitely felt like a naive thing in hindsight. At the time, we were just excited to have anything and to be able to get on the road. So it was quite a long road ahead of us in looking back, But.
Yeah. I mean, just looking at the dates, like 2009, I still feel like that was not that long ago, but I was 2 years out of college by then, and so like I feel old, but
No, you're not old, but
although you're a year older than me, so.
Am I really? Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
You're 86. I have your wiki up, so.
Okay.
So how would you compare, because obviously 2009 was, streaming music was completely different. How would you compare, like making music and releasing it now as to back then, before you can just like do it on your computer and publish it on Spotify?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was on the very tail end of the CD time, really. And I joke because I was on the tail end. As I was starting, CDs were starting to go away, and then but there was still enough of it that you would focus on it. And so I almost, unfortunately, I kind of know what that was like, or what it could have been like if CDs were still here, from a business standpoint and whatnot. But it's funny because I sold more CDs in my earliest days when those CDs were, objectively not as well produced or anything as now, as I do now. And now, the product is a lot more developed. It's a long way to go, of course, but still like way better than it was. But it kind of, just the culture of music was so different. So, but at the time it was all about, getting the right number of songs together and packaging it for that plastic disc. And that was the end game. And now, really the number of songs and that format is really just like it's like a guideline, but you're putting out one song at a time, and everyone's worried about how does that trigger the algorithms online, and you could really, the album itself is just kind of the vehicle to get a bunch of songs recorded, and then you treat them each individually, and it's just a different world now. Yeah,
absolutely. I have I think my car is like a 2013 or something. Like, it's not like super new, but it doesn't have a CD player.
Wow.
And I
seems early for that.
Yeah, and like I thought, and of course I still have like an iPod, so like I plug my iPod right in, but like it's just when I got that, I just thought it was wild because like earlier when we were talking about singles, like I remember buying singles on cassette tapes where it was literally just the one song. And
I joke because I remember when, I mean, CD players started disappearing from homes sooner than cars, but cars were kind of the last stronghold, you know, like people would be like, well, yeah, I'll buy it from my car, you know. And I remember, like, I don't know how many CDs I might have sold on that logic, but I think it was like right around maybe 2016, give or take, was the like when the final big car makers stopped including it as a standard feature, you know. And it was, you know, they were just following the industry, but you know, every musician, especially indie artist, but like every musician just took like a 20 to 40% pay cut when, you know, the automobile makers decided that they were done doing CD players. It hit kind of hard.
Now, would you say, well, not would you say, but like, so you say obviously, you know, the pay cut because people weren't buying the physical CDs, but wouldn't that have in turn saved you money? Because you don't have to make the physical CDs, or did it just kind of like break even?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, I mean, I kind of don't lean in I think a lot of artists kind of lean in the direction of hating streaming, and I just feel like, you know, the industry, it's a very convenient thing, and it's kind of undeniable. So it makes sense that you know water's going to flow in the easiest direction, or you know, path of least resistance. So streaming makes a lot of sense, and we just have to kind of figure out how to make sense around that.
Yeah.
But one of the great things about CDs was that the margins were, and still are, frankly, great. So, you know, like, especially, I mean, remember, I don't know, like maybe the late 90s, CDs would be like $22.
Yeah.
But like, you could, I mean, I don't know what a unit cost on a disc was back then. It was probably more than it is now. But like, you know, it would cost a label something between $1 and $3 to make that disc, but then they could sell it for, you know, for $20. So the margins are insane. And the difference now is that, but back then they still have to pay for the production of the music, which was really the real cost. And the difference now is that we still have to pay for the production of the music, but we don't get to make that huge margin on that end product. So there's a loss. But the production of music has come down in cost as well. And you can do it like, you know, I'm sitting in my little home studio now. You can do a lot more, you know, with you know, remote gear and smaller setups than maybe you used to be able to do. So the industry is definitely adjusting, I think, toward that shift. But I don't think I don't think we've quite, at least as an indie artist, I don't think we've quite gotten back to that sweet spot, you know.
Right.
But that's okay. You know, it'll come around, or we'll figure it out. You know, I think you gotta just kind of fight to meet the market and do the best you can.
Absolutely. And, you know, a lot of the artists that I have been talking to, instead of releasing entire albums at a time, they're just doing singles, because when you only release one song at a time, you're guaranteed that song is going to be heard. But if you release an entire album, maybe the first 3 songs will be listened to, and then the rest of them will be forgotten. So it's definitely changed, absolutely, just releasing music, but also like vinyls are coming back like in a big way. So because a lot of my audience is Italian musicians, which that's a whole other story in itself, but every time they release, you know, a song or an album, like they have like the physical vinyl, and I just think that it's really cool that that's coming back, especially in Nashville at Third Man Records, which is Jack White's record company. They have that booth where for like $3 you can